Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to Suzi Says. Well, here we are. It's the end of season 2 of Suzi Says. And before I say anything else, I just really want to thank you, to everyone who's listened to this season, who's shared an episode with a friend, who's sent me a message to say that one really resonated with you. Thank you. You're the reason I keep doing this and doing these podcasts. These conversations don't go anywhere without someone on the other end choosing to listen. And you do. So sincerely, thank you. I'll be honest with you about this season. It went to some heavy places. We talked about grief. We talked about abuse and coercive control. We talked about exhaustion and about what it feels like when the identity you've been carrying turns out not to be yours. And none of that was by accident. Those are the conversations I most want to have on this podcast. The ones that actually matter, the ones a lot of us are having quietly in our own heads, but not always out loud. So today, I'm not going to walk you back through the season episode by episode. You can do that yourself at any time. They're all there waiting for you. What I want to do instead is just pull back a bit, stand at the end of this season and look at the whole thing laid out, the way you'd lay the tools out on your workbench, and ask, when you put all 7 of these conversations next to each other, what were they actually trying to say? Because they were talking to each other, these episodes, more than I actually realised while we were making them. And a few threads just keep turning up season long that I want to follow with you now. I want to start where the season ended because I think the last episode named something the whole season was circling around. Episode 7 was just me on my own talking about what happens when resilience tips over into exhaustion. And the quiet realization underneath that episode, the one I keep coming back to, is a lot of people aren't actually more resilient than they used to be. They're just perhaps more tired and they've become very, very good at hiding it. We hand out the word resilient like it's the highest compliment. She's so resilient, he just gets on with it. And sometimes that's true and it's a strength. But sometimes resilient just means somewhere has learnt to keep functioning while quietly running on empty, and nobody's checked in. Because from the outside, they look completely fine. That's the gap I want you to sit with, the gap between coping and okay. Because looking fine on the outside and being well on the inside. You heard it in Lisa's episode 5, where we talked about what it's like to function while you don't feel safe, going to work, doing the school run, keeping the show on the road, all while something underneath isn't right. And you heard it again with Krista back in episode 3, looking by every external measure as successful and feeling completely empty behind it. Different lives, same gap. And the season kept circling back to it because here's the thing I most want you to take from it. Functioning is not the same as being, well-being. You can be coping beautifully and still not be okay. And noticing that in yourself, in someone you love, is not weakness. It's the start of the whole thing. The second thread runs right through the middle of the season, and it's a question, whose life are you actually living? Juliet opened this whole season with it back in episode 1. What is the life you're living? What if the life you're living isn't even yours? A life built on inherited beliefs rather than chosen ones. All the rules you absorbed so early and so completely that you never stopped to ask whether you actually agreed with them. You just took them on and built a life on top of them. And one day looked up and wondered, how did you get there? Then Krista in episode 3 took that question and lived the answer out loud, starting over in midlife, rebuilding an entire identity in her late 50s after losing nearly everything, which when you say it plainly like that sounds quite frightening. But what she showed us is that it's not an ending, it's authorship. It's picking the pen back up. And Abby in episode 6 brought it somewhere close to home for a lot of you listening out there. Women who marry into farming families and quietly absorb an identity that was never fully theirs to begin with. You take on the family, the farm, the name, the way things have always been done. And somewhere in all of that, it can get very hard to find where the family story ends and yours actually begins. 3 very different episodes, but one common thread underneath all of them. It is never too late and you are never too far in to reclaim authorship of your own life at any age, in any circumstance. That muscle doesn't expire. Now there's a thread in this season that I want to name out loud because it's almost a season, it's almost a season within the season, and that's the regional one. Alex in episode 2, Abby in episode 6, and my own solo episode at the end. All 3 of them live out here in rural and regional Australia, in the particular kind of hard that doesn't always fit the standard mental health conversation. Because the standard conversation often assumes things we don't have. It assumes services down the road. It assumes anonymity. It assumes you can quietly go and get help without the whole district knowing your business by Friday. And it doesn't always account for the things we do have a lot of: isolation, distance, generational expectation, drought, and that deep bone level pressure to just get on with it. That pressure to just get on with it is its own thing. It's been a strength out here for generations. It's how the work gets done, how the seasons get finished. But it's also the exact pressure that keeps people quiet for far too long. So I'll say what I said in episode 7. These pressures deserve their own language. Not a generic city framework dropped on top of a country town and expected to fit. Our realities are their own category of hard, and they deserve to be understood on their own terms. That's a big part of why this show exists at all. And the 4th thread is one of my favourites, and it ties a few of the episodes together. The idea that connection, not compliance, is the actual answer. Alex put it beautifully in episode 2 with plant a seed for safety. The idea that what keeps people safe and well isn't more rules to follow. It's more conversation, more genuine, ordinary human checking in. You don't policy your way to a community that looks after itself. You talk your way there, one real conversation at a time. And Abby said something in episode 6 that's actually stayed with me, that it's curiosity and the storytelling that hold a family together, far more than any rule ever could. Being curious about each other, telling each other the truth of how it's actually going. That's the glue, not the roster, not the rule, not the way it's always been done. The curiosity. This podcast is sponsored by WORKBENCH for the Mind, a mental fitness program created by me, Suzi Evans. After navigating my own loss and years of working with people in emotional pain, I created WORKBENCH for the Mind to give people something practical, not pressure. It's a calm, structured space to lay things out, make sense of what you're feeling, and build tools you can use every day. You're not broken. You're learning how to support your mind. Find out more at suzievans.com. I made my own version of that point in episode 7. Communities need spaces where people don't have to perform strength, where you can put the getting on with it down for a minute and just be honest about where you're at and not have it cost you everything. So that's the through line here, and I believe it all the way down. Systems don't fix people, relationships do every time. And the fifth thread is one I almost think of as the season's quiet tagline, voice, finding it, losing it, reclaiming it. It's most direct in Lisa's episode 5, where we talked about coercive control and survivor safety and the slow, painstaking process of learning to trust your own reality again, because that's what the kind of control does. It doesn't just it doesn't just take your freedom, it takes your confidence in your own lens or read on the world until you're second guessing what you saw with your own eyes. And finding your voice again after that is some of the hardest and bravest work a person can actually do. But once Lisa named it, I started hearing it everywhere across the season. In Juliet questioning the beliefs she'd been handed. In Krista speaking a whole new life into being in her 50s. Different context entirely, but the same muscle. Speaking the truth of your own experience out loud, saying this is how it is, it actually is for me, and trusting that it counts. That's the strength, that's the muscle. And like any muscle, it gets stronger the more you use it. And then there's the most tender conversation of the whole season, Ella, in episode 4. I don't want to rush past this one, so I won't. Ella came on to talk about palliative care and about love and loss and purpose, about raising her son Hunter and about building something lasting in his name. And what she gave us, I think, was a way of holding two things that were usually told to keep apart. Because we tend to treat grief and purpose as opposites, as though there's a time of pain and then, if you're lucky, a separate time of meaning that comes along afterwards to replace it. But that's not how Ella spoke about it at all. And that's what I feel about my own grief at the loss of Muzz. For Ella, it's not grief or purpose, it's just and purpose, sitting right next to each other at the same time in the same heart. Live for the moment, love for a lifetime. That was the line. And I'll just let it sit there for a second because it doesn't need anything from me. It rhymes gently with something Krista said too, that midlife isn't an ending. The same truth from a different doorway. Pain and meaning are not opposites. They're not waiting in line for each other. They very often live side by side, and learning to let them. That might be one of the most important things this whole season had to say. So that's the season laid out on the workbench. 6 threads, 7 conversations, all of them talking to each other. But I don't want to leave you with just a feeling, because Suzi Says has never been about feeling moved for an afternoon and then carrying on exactly as before. So let me land you somewhere you can actually stand. If there's one practical thread that ties the whole season together, it's this. It's not the big jumps that change things. It's the small, consistent steps. Krista talked about trust being rebuilt through small steps, not one heroic decision, but 100 ordinary ones. And Alex talked about planting a seed, which, if you've ever planted anything out here, you know is the least dramatic act in the world. You put one thing, small thing, in the ground and you tend it. Both of them from completely different directions are pointing the same way. So you don't have to overhaul your life this week. You don't have to fix the gap between coping and okay all at once, or reclaim your whole identity by Sunday. You just have to take the next small, honest step. Have the one conversation. Ask yourself the one real question. Plant the one seed. And if you want somewhere to actually do that, to take everything you've heard this season and put it to work rather than just feel moved by it, then that's exactly what Workbench for the Mind is for. It's practical, it's down to earth, it's built for ordinary people in ordinary weeks, and it's where the listening turns into doing. So come and find it. Start where you're standing, not where you think you should be. And before I go, to my guests, Juliet, Alex, Krista, Ella, Lisa, Abby, thank you for your honesty, for your time, and for trusting me and all of you with the stories that weren't easy to tell. This season is what it is because of them. I'm not going to give too much away just yet, but as for season 3, we're not done with these conversations. There's more to lay out on the workbench, and I'd love you, to be with me when we do. Until then, look after yourselves and remember, always choose you. This is Susie Evans. I'll talk to you next season.